all money is not good money. It just did not feel like something that I could stand behind and be proud.
Welcome to another episode of Richer Lives, aka the show that teaches you how to use money to live your best life. I'm Vivian Tu, and today I'm sitting down with the most decorated track and field athlete of all time and a total powerhouse founder and entrepreneur, Allyson Felix. Welcome to the show, Allyson.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to get into our convo, but before we do that, I need to know what is the most expensive pair of shoes you have ever purchased for on or off the track?
Oh, probably the spikes that I wore in my last Olympics. I think they were somewhere around $2,000.
$2,000? Wait, can you wear them again, or is it like a one use?
Kind of like a one use. They're like handmade, very beautiful, but very light.
I imagine them as like the shoes with like the wings on the back.
They were definitely a work of art.
The Greek goddess shoes.
Yeah.
So you started your career here in LA, but that very quickly took you to the world stage. You earned your first silver medal at 18. Can you talk to me a little bit about your early career?
I was actually the first person here in America to go pro from high school directly to professional track and field. And so I just looked at kind of the upside of it. And I think looking back, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so it was all just so exciting. I had no idea what a big deal it was and what I was really putting myself into.
And how has your family, their background, shaped the way you think about your career and your finances?
They have been so influential, in all of that. When I came into the sport, I didn't grow up in it. And so I didn't know a ton about it. And they didn't either. And so we were just kind of figuring it out on our own. But really the way that I was raised, my parents are very hard workers and really taught us, these foundational principles. And I felt like I really held on to them throughout my career.
You mentioned the principles. Like, what were some of those foundational things that they taught you growing up?
It's all about work ethic, never quitting, really being like in service, like helping others. And my mom was a teacher and my dad a seminary professor and a pastor. So they were really people who cared about people, who gave back, and they really saw value in that.
And did those lessons carry on over once you started your career full time and started really making some money?
They did, because for them, it was really beyond money that was important. It was more so about the values. They would always preach, all money is not good money. And when I was younger, I never really quite grasp that.
Yeah, can you explain that to me?
Yeah, just that you might be offered something for it, but that doesn't mean you need to take it. There's value beyond that. And that's something that I saw, in their careers. Being a teacher, that's not a high paid job profession, but I saw that my mom could affect and change people's lives. And so I just, having that modeled for me, I had to pass on some things in my career and see value beyond it.
You got to know yourself, know your worth.
Exactly.
You started running in the 9th grade. What was the point where you felt like, oh, I can actually make money running?
It wasn't until really towards the end of my high school career. Because I didn't grow up in the sport, I didn't have dreams early on of going to the Olympics. I was focused on like, okay, I really want to go to college. And I know that if I want to go, somewhere that I have my eyes set on, I'm going to need a scholarship to get there. And so that became my route out of how I could do that.
Yeah. And track is known for being one of those sports that has literally a laundry list of events. How did you decide, what events am I actually going to run? What am I going to participate in? And did money have a factor to play in any of those?
No, because track and field is not a high earning. No matter, you have the events that are, higher earning, which are like the sprints.
Yeah.
But all of it, it's not on par with, all of the other professional sports. So that didn't really play into it. It was more so just what I naturally was good at. And I knew I didn't like to run a long time. I knew we had to do the mile in PE. And this is not for me. So I love to go fast. I love just racing and the competitive nature of it. So I was completely drawn to the sprints.
And you made this massive decision, like you mentioned earlier, to be the first high school athlete to immediately go pro and skip that college eligibility. What were the financial considerations going into that?
As I look back, it wasn't really a decision that was made off of, financials. I was really grateful that my family could support me, and I really did want to go to college, but the Olympics were the following year. And so I knew that if I went to college, it's a really demanding schedule from a competitive aspect. It's all about the NCAA system. It's all about scoring points. And so it was really a decision more so of like, what's going to put me in the best position to be able to make the Olympic team. But that did come along with going pro and being thrust into the scene of like picking an agent and dealing with all these contracts and these different, fees I was being offered and just kind of navigating that world.
So even though you forewent your college eligibility, you still went to school. And I heard you got somebody else to pay for it. Adidas.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Coming from the family of educators, I knew it was a non-negotiable that I was going to school. And because I went pro, that was another expense that was then going to be on me. And so as we were negotiating my contract with Adidas, we made sure to have them put in the contract that they would pay for my tuition. And so I'm really grateful that I had people around me to think of that, to be able to include it.
Can I ask whose idea was it to include it in the contract?
My dad's.
Of course.
Yeah. And we didn't know that space, So we were basically like calling all of our connections and just asking people who had experience to help us, navigate this new world of, signing a contract.
Can you actually talk me through the financial experiences of those early days of your career? It costs money to make money. Like, what did those expenses look like?
The expenses really are on you individually as an athlete. And so there is no federal funding for the Olympic team or anything like that. And the way you make money is, by having a sponsor. So your footwear sponsor, that's your salary. That's going to be your biggest endorsement. You can have other brand deals and things like that. And then you go to track meets and you get an appearance fee, you get prize money, and that's how you continue to make money. But you do have to pay out your coach, your traveling fees, like all of those expenses. And so it's a little different, than other sports where it's kind of a package deal. Everything is kind of on your own in track and field.
You earned your first silver medal at 18 and went on to become the most decorated track and field athlete of all time. Not the most decorated female, but of all time, period. What financial successes came with that?
One way that the structure of contracts work is there are rollover bonuses. So every time, you get a gold medal or you place a certain first, second, or third at a world championships, those are rollover bonuses. So that helped my salary increase. That? So if you go to the Olympic Games and you get a gold medal, your contract might be structured so that you get a $100,000 bonus. And that bonus would roll over to your base salary. And so you could continue to build on that. Every time you go to a championship, an Olympic Games or a World Championship. So it's a real way to, increase your salary. But it also works the other way as well.
Oh, so if you don't start getting those medals,
then you get reductions. And if you don't place a certain place in the world, you might get a $75,000 reduction and, that sticks with you.
That's scary.
So it can be great earning potential, but it can also be really scary because if you're not performing at your highest or you have an injury, it comes back.
I was just going to ask you because we had Gabby Douglas on the show and she shared with me that a gold medal at the Olympics, you make like $37,000. It's not this crazy amount of money and that could be a lifetime's worth of work. So you're telling me that some of these sponsorship deals, you get a bonus on top of what the actual Olympic Association pays you.
Yeah, you definitely don't go to the Olympics to get paid. Everything is going to come from other sources. Your big deals are going to be your footwear sponsor, all your other partnership and brand deals. That's where you're going to make your money.
It sounds like being an athlete, obviously, your income is very inconsistent. There are high highs and low lows. How did you balance and budget that?
As an athlete, you're so hyper-focused on performance. When I was in the peak of it all, I didn't quite think so much about the practicality of it all. I tried to surround myself with really great people. But it's one of those things that now looking back, it's like, wow, if you're, not at the very top 1%, it's a hard industry to maintain and to have longevity. You really can't dip below too much. And that can also play into your performance because it's stressful to be thinking about, your next paycheck when you're trying to perform at the highest. And so I really tried to focus on my performance and then let that take care of everything.
When you started making more money, did you ever run into lifestyle inflation?
Absolutely. I think Yeah, I mean, because as you start to make more, also more people depend on you. You're employing more people, especially with the structure of track and field. You're essentially employing your coach. Your physio has to travel with you. And so not only are you, paying for yourself, but you're paying for them too. When I go to the Olympic Games, it's one of the biggest expenses that I have. I didn't want to stay in the Olympic Village because it's the most important race of my life. The Olympic Village is more of like a college dorm situation.
You don't want to sleep on a cardboard bed?
No. I really wanted to control my environment and, be able to cook meals and just be able to rest and focus. But that's at your own expense. And so you have the expense of a place to stay, the expense of your travel, bringing your coach, your physio, yourself, and any support system. So whether you're having family, there's a cost of tickets. You don't, you don't get tickets. And so there's all these other things that come along with it. And then also knowing that people depend on you.
It sounds like throughout your entire career, you've been relatively responsible with your money. But I got to ask, as a young athlete, what were some of those splurges? What are some of the big fun things you bought when you started making money?
Oh my gosh. I remember 2 things I bought that to this day, I still regret.
Regret?
Well, just because it was not practical. I bought this anaconda skin Gucci bag. And I think it was $7,000. And at the time that was a huge splurge. And I was like, did I really need that? I still have it, but that was one. And then I remember, this is early days. I got these rims on my Escalade.
Pimp My Ride style,
yes,
early 2000s.
Exactly. And another one, it was just what were you doing? Just doing the most.
As a millennial, that's very cool to me.
At the time, I was all into it. But now looking back, I'm like, that wasn't really a smart decision.
Looking back on those early days, when you're getting those rims, what is a financial lesson you wish you had known that you would teach yourself now that could have helped you?
Just to think about the future, not so much putting away for retirement. There's all of those things, that are obviously foundational things to do. But what do I want to do in a business sense? What are things that I might have a passion for, thinking about being an entrepreneur and really planning for that as well. And I just didn't have that mindset early on. I always kind of just really thought one-dimensional early on. And so I wish that I could have kind of broadened that.
Not just an athlete, but a businesswoman.
Yeah. And starting the process to get there early.
Before we sprint into more of Allyson's story, let's take a quick break for a SoFi money tip. Listen up, business owners. It's time to talk about how things are fitting. No, not your clothes, your finances. While owning your own small business can be a dream, finding financing that fits your needs is like trying to find the perfect accessory for your outfit. Some loans are just too much. More money than you need, and suddenly you're paying for a loan that's riding off into the sunset with your cash flow. Others are way too small, they don't cover anything. It wouldn't even cover your next inventory order. And others come with way too many strings attached. Fees, requirements, restrictions. It's just not it. That's why I love SoFi's marketplace. It helps you shop and compare financing options that may actually work for your business. So go to SoFi.com/SMB and shop for financing that fits. So Allyson, your success on the track has been legendary, but a lot of those of us who don't really even follow the sports world actually know you from being the powerhouse who was not afraid to call out a major sponsor about their maternity leave policies. Can you talk to me about the bravery and the decision to be able to do that? And were you ever worried about the blowback?
I was terrified. I mean, you're talking about this huge company. And I knew I still wanted to be involved in the sport. It was only because I deeply believed that, we should have maternal protections. I deeply believe that you should not have to choose between being a mother and being an athlete that pushed me towards that, because it was probably the scariest thing that I've ever done.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the financial impacts that you have to think about as a full-time athlete when it comes to starting a family?
Essentially, what was happening for female athletes when they started families, their contracts would be paused. And so basically, you just wouldn't be making money during the time of your pregnancy and until you come back. And our contracts are all performance-based. And so if you have a baby and it spans during the time of an Olympic Games or a World Championship, and you're not able to go out there and win a gold medal, then you get a reduction. So there is nothing in place to protect us. And so you had all of these women who had been performing at the height of their careers. They have children, and essentially they would be pushed out because they just weren't making enough to continue on.
Ugh. Do you think there are women athletes who actually delay pregnancy or just put it off indefinitely because they're afraid to lose their careers?
Absolutely. I definitely put mine off. I mean, I felt like I needed to wait until I was safe because I saw the horror stories of my teammates. And it was kind of this unspoken thing, but I saw them struggle through motherhood, lose contracts, not get new ones, just not be supported. And so for me, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll wait. If I wait until I've gone to 4 Olympics, I have 6 gold medals, maybe I'm safe. But I found myself in the exact same position. And that's really, I think, where the speaking out came from, because it was just like, this is going to go on forever if we don't do something about it.
And how did your timeline factor into that? Like you mentioned, you had all of those medals and awards under your belt, but knowing that athletes' career trajectories and timelines are typically shorter than the average 40-year career, do you think people should be thinking about how long they have before having kids?
I think it's different now because, like, with those protections secured, I hope that women feel like they can have children at the height of their career and feel secured, to come back. But when I was thinking about it, it was really risking it all because it was saying, I'm going to walk away from the security of this. And I wasn't paid for 2 years while I was going through that fight. And that's something that not everyone can do. I'm grateful that I was able to, save enough to be able to endure that. But the implications of that were huge. That was the height of my career and earning, potential. And to take on that fight, I lost a lot, and there were consequences that continued to come from that.
I don't know if everybody even knows the full magnitude of this. You were in the middle of renegotiating your largest contract and decided, no, I'm going to speak to the press. Was there a number that you felt like you needed to hit before you could do that, or was it more of a feeling?
When I was going through that renegotiation period, even before I disclosed my pregnancy, I was already offered a contract that was 70% less than what I was already making. And that was just like a gut punch. I don't know exactly, but I would imagine my age. I think they were focused on, new athletes. And I think they believed that nobody else was going to pay me. I had been a Nike athlete for almost a decade. And your value really is what someone is willing to pay. And because I had so been branded that way, I don't think they believed that anybody else would step up. And so walking away from that was hard, but it was more so, I don't even think I thought about the finances of it all. I think that scared me because it was like, okay, what are you going to do? But it was like this deep calling, and I had a difficult pregnancy. My daughter was born 2 months early. She spent time in the NICU. And that's when I was going through all that. And I looked at her and her life and thinking about her generation. It was like, this is why I have to do this. And so it wasn't like an analyzing of my finances. It maybe should have been. But it was just, I feel like I need to do this for others.
Yeah. And it goes back to what you mentioned to me earlier. Your dad instilling a lot of those values in you.
Yeah.
It just felt like the right thing to do.
All money is not good money. And to me, even that 70% less, like, I just couldn't in good faith take that and know the fight that I had been in, to secure these protections. It just did not feel like something that I could stand behind and be proud.
Well, thank goodness you did say something, because ultimately your advocacy ended up changing a lot of maternal policies for some of these major sponsors and these major companies. How does it feel to know that you speaking out had such an impact?
It feels incredible. I get to talk to, athletes like Naomi Osaka, and, it means the world to me that she knows that her best days are still ahead of her and that she has that security of knowing that her contract is there. And so that is the real reward. I mean, obviously, it didn't benefit me financially at all. It's one of those things like when you're at the front of something, it's not about that. It's really about, okay, how can we change things for everybody else who's going to come up?
There's like this saying, like the day you plant the seed isn't the day you eat the fruit off of the tree. Your hard work led to so many benefits for so many other athletes.
I think there's so many people who came before me who did the same thing. And I think it's really like standing on the shoulders. And I deeply believe in that, paying it forward.
Looking back now, wiser, knowing what you know, how do you feel like that experience changed the way you perceive money, career, growth?
I think it really made me think about what matters most to me. Earlier on my career, it was about finances and setting myself up for the future and all of those things that are so important. But I think it just made me see value in my family and health, in what really brings me happiness and joy.
Yeah. What advice would you give to young athletes that are faced with a decision that may or may not align with their values? How do you make the right call?
I think it's a deeply personal thing. You know, for me, I have to be able to be proud of the work that I'm doing. And I would encourage young athletes to think about their partnerships and to think about them before they sign the deal, you know, to really talk and understand, you know, the ins and outs of it. Because I think a lot of brands like to preach family, and business is not family. It's a business relationship, and a lot of it is based on performance, and that's not how you treat your family. And so those two things are very separate. But with that understanding, I think you know more of what you're walking into and what your expectations are.
Yeah. If you know you are walking into the lion's den, you will act appropriately.
Exactly.
Let's pause for a sec and show you how SoFi can help you get your money right. It's time for a quick math lesson. If you had a savings account earning basically 0 interest, plus an investment account with 0 perks, plus 0 access to a financial planner, what do you get? I don't even need a calculator for that one. That's why I use SoFi Plus, America's most rewarding financial membership. Here are all the ways SoFi Plus adds up. You get SoFi Bank's highest APY on savings, plus a 1% match on recurring SoFi Invest deposits, paid in rewards points, plus unlimited sessions with a SoFi Wealth Financial Planner that unlocks $1,000 plus in annual value, all in one app. And the best part, it's only $10 a month or at no cost with direct deposit into a SoFi checking and savings account. The math is mathing, people. Subscribe to SoFi Plus today at SoFi.com/SoFi Plus. From launching Seish to founding Always Alpha, you have gone from just an athlete to being a full-blown entrepreneur, business person. Talk to me about the thought process that was like, I'm not just going to be a runner myself. I'm going to help other runners. I'm going to create a product line. I want to do so much more.
I felt like I always had that mentality. I remember like growing up, me and my brother, we used to like open these stores in our house. And I think we really just like collected things around the house to sell like back to our family. But I feel like we always had that entrepreneurial spirit. And so when I was faced with that really real situation of walking away from, you know, my sponsor and trying to navigate and figure it out, my brother, again, we're business partners, and we had this decision to make and decided to do it ourselves. And so it was really almost like we were thrust into it, but it was something that was definitely a long time coming.
Show me your super cute shoes and talk to me about how you decided to found Seish after ending things with your last footwear partner.
Yeah, so these are the Seish shoes. These are the Evelyn Runner. And just diving into this industry has been a learning experience. And so what we thought we were building with Seish was, you know, shoes that I could wear in the Olympics. But it actually became a much bigger thing because as we did a deep dive in the industry, we learned that all shoes that are made for women are just men's shoes. They're basically made off of a lace, which is just a mold of a foot, and it's the mold of a man's foot used to make women's footwear. And so, yeah, it took me a minute to really grasp that because I'm like, no, you go to the shoe store, you see the one wall for men, the one wall for women. But as it's broken down, really the only difference between the two walls is really great marketing. And so when we learned that, it was like, this is a huge opportunity to say that women deserve better and to give them product that is made for them and based on their body.
Footwear is an incredibly, competitive industry.
Yeah.
Financially, how did you get a shoe wear line off of the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough. It's one of those heritage industries where these giant brands have been in that landscape for so long. So for us to break through, we raised money. We did a Series A and were able to launch this brand. But it was during a very challenging time during COVID. And so quickly, all of these hurdles were in our way, and really having to navigate and put a really strong team together to be able to weather the storm.
What was the process of making sure that you were able to stick to your guns, that mission-driven value, but also balance the financial needs, especially during a tough time like COVID?
At the core of it all it's purpose-driven. It's all about the mission. And of course, the product is the best running shoes, made for women. But also it's about standing with women. It's about seeing them. We have this really great maternity policy where if your shoe size changes due to pregnancy, we'll give you a new pair of your shoes. So a way to just see women. But when we started it off, it was really taking a risk and betting on ourselves that, we could do this. And so being able to say, I'm not going to go the traditional route, and I'm going to, go outside of the box and see if I can make this work.
Earlier, you said you raised money to found Seish. As of 2023, women-founded startups account for just 2% of VC funding in the US and Europe.
Yeah.
That sucks. What was that process like?
It sucks. And as a founder, a woman of color, it's even less than 2%. It was going into a lot of rooms, pitching to a lot of older white men, trying to explain, this problem and solution. And it was hard. At times, there was imposter syndrome. At times, it was just like, I feel like no one is getting me. Like, I feel like they're putting me in this box of just athlete and not seeing the vision here. The access was great, but when I wanted to get in the door and talk about something very serious, it wasn't always taken that way. And so I think a lot of the skills that did allow me to be successful on the track ended up helping because I'm not fazed by a no. I'm going to be persistent. I'm determined. But you have to be, because it is so hard out here, especially for women, especially for women of color.
What advice would you give to other women who are looking to raise investment rounds? First,
get a mentor. Have somebody who's done it before, who you can bounce things off of, who you can vent to, who can make great introductions for you, and help you kind of vet things. And then know that you belong. Just because you're going to face a lot of no's, it doesn't mean that your idea is not valid. It doesn't mean that you can't do this. It's just going to be a really bumpy road, but you have to stick with it.
Did you have a mentor?
I still do. Jackie Jordan-Kersee has been my longtime mentor in sports, but as I transition, I have a business mentor, and she has been fantastic. Just investing in me, caring about me and allowing me to ask all my business questions, everything that I think is silly to really important. And it's nice to know someone who can help you navigate a new space.
Besides Seish, you've also founded a female management company called Always Alpha. Tell me the story behind the name and why you felt like women athletes specifically needed a certain type of representation.
The idea of Always Alpha really came from my brother managing me for my entire career. And he really created a boutique experience for me. Everything was tailored around, my interests, what I wanted to do on the track, but also off of the track. And I would have athletes come to me and ask which agencies they should go with. And I didn't really feel like I could point them in one particular direction. I would feel like some are really great, in this space and others are good for this. But by creating this management firm, we were able to recreate what I had. And that was basically saying, we're going to listen to what you want to accomplish. We're going to bring in experts and we're going to really tailor this to your experience. And we're interested in helping you, obviously, with your brand deals and your strategy, but we also want to help you do impact work. Whether you want to build a new brand or write a book, just support the things that you're interested in. And the name really comes from, the way that we think of alpha and alphas. It's really been thought of as this male thing, but there's nothing in the definition that says that. And so we really are reclaiming that.
Women are leaders.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of spinning plates. You're running 2 businesses, your advocacy work, ostensibly still running for fun, and you've got 2 young kids. How do you decide what is worth putting your time, money, energy into?
For me, it's all about what is impactful. Like, what is going to move the needle, what is going to drive change. That's really where I see value, and understanding I can't do everything. I'm going to have to turn some things down. I want to be a present mom. So sometimes I got to work things around like baseball practice or, pick up and bedtime. Those are things that are really important to me. And sometimes that means taking the red eye or, being somewhere for less than 24 hours. But that's the season I'm in, and that's what works. And so I'm learning how to kind of make it all flow in harmony.
You don't ever get FOMO?
Yes. I get FOMO. I have the mom guilt, like all the things. Some days I feel like I'm thriving at work. I'm killing it. And I come home and then it's like chaos and I feel like I'm a bad mom or vice versa. And it's like every day I'm just going to show up. I'm going to do the best that I can. It's not always going to be perfectly in balance. I don't even think that exists, but I'm just going to do the best job that I can.
As an athlete, you will invest years of training into very literally seconds at a competition. How has that impacted your perspective on the rest of your life?
I think just being able to see the long game. As an Olympian, I always say, you have to be a little crazy because, for my race, it's a 21-second race. Mm-hmm. You work for 4 years for 21 seconds. So everything is about the big picture. And I think that's helped me, especially in business. I'm not looking for something quick. I can see, 4 years, 8 years down the road, and I'm thinking about all of those things. And I feel like that's been just ingrained in me from an early age. It's kind of just how I've always done things.
Yeah. Has that also permeated into your ethos for building wealth for you and your family?
Absolutely. I've learned so much from the rooms I've been in and just the experience that I've had over the years. And so I am definitely, teaching my daughter, and I will my son as well, about money early on. There are so many things that I wish I would have learned, earlier about whether it's investing or just setting yourself up for the future and even taking care of your finances and being really involved. I think back to my first contract and, I had people really handle everything. I wish I was really sitting there and understanding and learning. And that's going to be something that I pass on to my kids to do right from the jump.
And your kids, they're only 6 and 1, but if they decided to pursue careers as athletes, how would you use your knowledge to help guide them through that process today?
I would definitely warn them that it's a difficult road to go down. And I think just from a financial aspect of it, there are sports that make a lot more money than other sports. And I might encourage them to go down maybe a more lucrative path. But I think it shows that you have to have a passion for it. And so if they, obviously I'm going to support them in whatever they want to do, but I do want them to understand that it can be hard. You sacrifice a lot. You miss out on a lot of work experience when you come back to the working world. So I think I would really be able to inform their decision and let them know kind of the ins and outs of what the picture really looks like instead of something that you might see from the outside that might look glamorous. I can give them the real tea.
What does a richer life look like and mean to you?
Having the ability to spend time with my family, to travel, to be comfortable, and I think more than anything, to have peace.
To have peace. Do you think you've reached it?
I think I have. I think because that's where my value is. I don't think I'm chasing any specific thing. I see all the upside in just being able to have peace.
Allyson, thank you so much for joining me today. I loved hearing about everything you did on the track, now that you're doing off the track, and your entire career. It's been so inspiring, and I know all of our viewers are going to love this just as much as I did.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's all for today. Let us know in the comments what inspired you the most from Allyson's story, or send this to a friend who's chasing their own finish line. And as always, like and subscribe for more from Richer Lives. See you next time.
Oh, so many things I wish I would have known early on.
Reporter Allyson on the beat.
It's like, Mom, I got you.
Yeah. Oh, they have real water.